Welcome back, Grim Histories fanatics. Tonight, we delve into a chapter of history so dark, so twisted, it's practically dripping with the sulfurous stench of hellfire. And possibly a little mildew. I'm your host, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss the chilling tales we unearth from history's darkest corners. Ever wondered if there was a medieval instruction manual for witch hunting? And the church, facing a crisis of faith, desperately needs a scapegoat. Enter the Malleus Maleficarum, authored by two Dominican inquisitors, Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger. It provides detailed instructions on torture techniques, offering suggestions on how to coax confessions from suspected witches. It wasn't a clandestine pamphlet circulated in dark corners. It was officially sanctioned by Pope Innocent VIII, lending it the weight and authority of the Church. This papal bull, effectively a stamp of approval from the highest religious authority, transformed the Malleus into a powerful weapon, empowering inquisitors and local authorities to unleash a wave of persecution that would sweep across Europe. Suddenly, accusations of witchcraft weren't just local gossip. They were matters of faith, punishable by the most horrific means imaginable. Think thumbscrews, the rack, waterboarding, the full medieval torture buffet. A book, penned by two men, fueled a wave of terror that lasted for centuries, resulting in the deaths of tens of thousands, mostly women. We'll explore the terrifying consequences of this how-to guide in the following parts of this series. We'll uncover the chilling tales of the witch hunts, the absurd accusations, and the horrific punishments. And the justification? Witches, it argued, were impervious to ordinary pain, so only the most brutal methods could break their supernatural resistance. These weren't your kindly village priests. These were men who believed wholeheartedly in the reality of witchcraft, and saw it lurking in every shadow, every whispered rumor, every woman who dared to deviate from societal norms. A step-by-step guide, complete with illustrations and helpful tips, on how to identify, interrogate, and ultimately eliminate those pesky witches who were supposedly plaguing Europe. Oh no, it's a meticulously crafted argument. Building a terrifying case against women, weaving together theological dogma, misogynistic tropes, and frankly some pretty dubious evidence. The book is a masterpiece of manipulation, strategically using scripture to justify its horrific conclusions. It meticulously details the supposed signs of witchcraft: a birthmark shaped like a cross, a suspiciously strong aversion to holy water. These were all red flags, according to the Malleus, marking a woman as a potential agent of Satan. Well, buckle up, buttercup, because such a book not only existed, it became a global bestseller. Its title? Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, can you believe it? A book that effectively became a license to kill, sanctioned by the Church, fueling centuries of paranoia, torture, and mass hysteria. And it wasn't just a dry academic treatise. Oh no. This thing was a how-to guide for the systematic eradication of women, disguised as a holy crusade against the devil's agents. Imagine this. It's 1486. Europe is reeling from the Black Death. Social unrest is brewing. The Malleus isn't just a list of alleged witchy deeds. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The Malleus Maleficarum isn't just about identifying witches. It's a comprehensive guide on how to deal with them. The sheer audacity of this book is breathtaking. Think about that for a moment. A book penned by two men fueled a wave of terror that lasted for centuries, resulting in the deaths of tens of thousands, mostly women. We'll explore the terrifying consequences of this how-to guide in the following parts of this series. We'll uncover the chilling tales of the witch hunts, the absurd accusations, and the horrific punishments. So, you've heard of the Malleus Maleficarum, The Hammer of Witches, a book supposedly that unleashed centuries of terror. But what exactly was in this infamous tome that made it such a terrifying force? Let's delve into its twisted, dark heart. Forget your modern notions of witchcraft. The Malleus didn't depict whimsical, pointy-hatted figures brewing potions under a full moon. In a time when life was precarious, when disease and famine were constant threats, the idea of a demonic conspiracy actively working against you must have been utterly paralyzing. The Malleus Maleficarum didn't just describe witches. It created a monster that would haunt Europe for centuries. Remember, the presumption of guilt was already in place. The confession was simply a formality? No, its authors, Heinrich Kramer and Jakob Sprenger, painted a picture far more sinister, far more intertwined with the anxieties of 15th century Europe. These graphic accounts, far from being based on factual evidence, were fueled by a climate of fear and religious extremism. They served as propaganda, reinforcing the narrative of a vast, insidious threat lurking within society. Their vision was one of demonic conspiracy, a satanic underworld actively working to undermine the Christian order. And who were the key players in this infernal drama? Women. We're talking about milk-stealing witches who supposedly drained the udders of cows and goats using supernatural means. These accusations weren't just random. They targeted women whose livelihoods directly depended on livestock. And then there were the accusations of causing storms, blights on crops, and even the spontaneous combustion of barns. Convenient, wasn't it? A way to explain away misfortunes and scapegoat those already marginalized, specifically women. The Malleus presented a truly bizarre worldview. It argued that women, by their very nature, were more susceptible to demonic influence. Why? Because of their inherent weakness, their supposed insatiable lust, and their proximity to Eve, the original sinner? This wasn't just a theological argument. It was a justification for the persecution of anyone deemed different, outspoken, or simply inconvenient. Think about it. A woman who deviated from societal norms. A midwife with unconventional birthing practices. A healer using herbal remedies outside the church's approval. The book is brimming with outlandish accusations and proofs of witchcraft. One of the most chilling aspects of the Malleus is its detailed instructions on how to identify and prosecute witches. The descriptions of demonic activity are equally grotesque and fantastical. The Malleus describes witches attending Sabbaths, engaging in orgies with demons, and sacrificing infants. Can you imagine the terror these descriptions must have instilled? And that's just the beginning of the story. So, we've established that the Malleus Maleficarum, this hammer of witches, laid out a chillingly detailed manual for identifying, prosecuting, and executing alleged witches. But how did this monstrous tome go from the relatively obscure musings of two Dominican inquisitors to a runaway bestseller, fueling centuries of fear and violence across Europe? The answer, my friends, is a potent cocktail of religious fervor, technological advancement, and, dare I say, good old-fashioned marketing. Their book, a product of their own intense belief in the very real existence of witches, and the urgent need to combat their supposed evils, wasn't just a theological treatise. It was a meticulously crafted piece of propaganda. It played on the deep-seated anxieties of a population grappling with plague, famine, war, and the ever-present feeling of societal instability. Kramer himself, a man clearly not averse to self-promotion, actively promoted his work, traveling and lecturing on the subject, further fueling the flames of the witch hunt frenzy. It became a tool for those seeking power, a weapon to settle personal grudges, and a means for the Church to consolidate its authority. The book's success wasn't just a matter of availability. It was a consequence of its perfectly timed alignment with widespread fear, religious fervor, and the revolutionary power of the printing press. Can you imagine the impact? The sheer scale of it? The book's detailed descriptions of witchcraft, complete with lurid illustrations in later editions, it wasn't just a book. It was a catalyst, a weapon, a bestseller that unleashed a dark chapter in human history. And that, my friends, is a truly terrifying thought. Tapped into the collective fear and superstition of the era, making it not just a tool for inquisitors but also a popular sensation, a page-turner for a medieval audience craving excitement and confirmation of their darkest fears. They weren't content with simply writing it. They actively sought papal approval, a stamp of authority that would lend their work immense credibility. And in a stroke of luck, Pope Innocent VIII granted that very approval in 1487, issuing a papal bull that explicitly endorsed the Malleus and its methods. Imagine the scene. It's the mid-1480s, the printing press, still a relatively new invention, is slowly but surely revolutionizing the dissemination of information. Before Gutenberg, copying a book was a painstaking, time-consuming process, often involving multiple scribes working for months, even years. This meant books were expensive, rare, and largely confined to the elite. Suddenly, this wasn't just the opinion of two somewhat obscure friars. It was the official stance of the Catholic Church. Imagine the impact. The printing press churned out copies at a remarkable rate, spreading the Malleus's terrifying pronouncements across the continent like wildfire. Suddenly, every priest, every magistrate, every village elder had access to this definitive guide on how to identify and deal with the supposed threat of witchcraft. But now, suddenly, books could be reproduced in far greater numbers and at a fraction of the cost. Enter Heinrich Kramer and Jakob Sprenger. These two Dominican friars, not exactly household names before their collaboration on the Malleus, were, let's say, ambitious. This papal blessing was like rocket fuel for the Malleus. But the Malleus wasn't just a practical guide. It was a gripping read filled with sensationalistic accounts of demonic pacts, orgies, and unspeakable acts of malevolence. The Malleus Maleficarum wasn't just printed. It was marketed. It's a chilling reminder of how easily fear and superstition, combined with powerful institutions and new technologies, can create a perfect storm of devastating consequences. It wasn't just a book. It was a catalyst, a weapon, a bestseller that unleashed a dark chapter in human history. And that, my friends, is a truly terrifying thought. So, the Malleus Maleficarum, this hammer of witches, wasn't just gathering dust on some forgotten shelf. It became a bestseller, a handbook for the religiously zealous, a tool for settling scores, and a terrifying weapon in the hands of those seeking power. Instead of considering natural causes or perhaps the limitations of medieval medicine, suspicion falls on a neighbor, an old woman living alone, a woman with unconventional knowledge of herbs and healing. Suddenly, the Malleus Maleficarum provides the script. Its detailed instructions on identifying a witch, from the telltale devil's mark to the supposed ability to conjure storms, become a blueprint for accusation. For instance, the infamous witch hunts in the Alpine regions. Hundreds of thousands of people, mostly women, were accused, tortured, and executed across Europe over several centuries. The Malleus Maleficarum didn't single-handedly cause these hunts, but it undeniably provided the framework, the justification, and the fuel for the devastating fire that consumed so many lives. It became a chilling testament to the power of belief, the dangers of unchecked authority, and the devastating consequences of fear and superstition. The chilling details within its pages weren't just words on paper. They were the blueprints for a nightmare that lasted for centuries. Isolated communities, already struggling with harsh conditions and limited resources, became breeding grounds for suspicion and fear. The Malleus Maleficarum provided a convenient explanation for their misfortunes, and the ensuing witch hunts decimated entire villages. Entire families were wiped out, based on flimsy evidence and fueled by the book's insidious influence. Its publication coincided with a period of immense social upheaval in Europe. Even in cities, the Malleus played a role. The book's popularity among the urban elite, who sought to control and regulate society, led to the persecution of individuals deemed socially deviant or politically inconvenient. Women, in particular, were disproportionately targeted, as the Malleus reinforced existing patriarchal prejudices and anxieties. Suddenly, anyone with a grudge, a land dispute, or simply a desire for power could wield the Malleus as a weapon. Accusations became commonplace, trials brutal. Remember, we're talking about a time when torture was a standard investigative technique and confessions, whether coerced or genuine, were easily obtained. The Black Death, barely a century past, had left a legacy of fear and uncertainty. People clung to explanations, however fantastical, to make sense of a world seemingly turned upside down. And the Malleus, with its detailed descriptions of demonic pacts and the supposed powers of witches, provided a ready-made framework for understanding, or rather misunderstanding, the inexplicable. Imagine the scene. A harvest fails, livestock dies, a child falls ill. The book wasn't just read by clergymen. It found its way into the hands of local officials, judges, and even common folk. Think of the sheer terror, the fear of being accused, the public humiliation of a trial, the agonizing pain of torture, and the horrific spectacle of execution. The Malleus didn't just describe the supposed crimes of witches. It laid out the procedures for their detection and punishment. It fueled the flames of paranoia and suspicion, transforming ordinary disagreements into accusations of demonic conspiracy. The impact wasn't limited to rural areas. Can you imagine the sheer scale of this tragedy? Hundreds of thousands of people, mostly women, were accused, tortured, and executed across Europe over several centuries. The Malleus Maleficarum didn't single-handedly cause these hunts, but it undeniably provided the framework, the justification, and the fuel for the devastating fire that consumed so many lives. It became a chilling testament to the power of belief, the dangers of unchecked authority, and the devastating consequences of fear and superstition. The chilling details within its pages weren't just words on paper. They were the blueprints for a nightmare that lasted for centuries. So the witch hunt subsided. The Malleus Maleficarum, that infamous hammer of witches, eventually faded from its position as the ultimate authority on demonic possession and witchcraft. But did its influence truly vanish? Did the centuries of terror it inspired simply end? Of course not. That would be far too simple a narrative for Grim Histories. The legacy of the Malleus Maleficarum is a chilling echo resonating through the corridors of history, a testament to the enduring power of fear, religious extremism, and ingrained misogyny. While the organized witch hunts waned, the seeds of suspicion, the ingrained distrust of women, and the readily available scapegoat of the witch remained. The Malleus Maleficarum continued to be printed and studied, albeit often within academic circles, becoming a subject of fascination for historians and theologians, some who critiqued it, some who incredibly attempted to justify its reasoning. Even today, its text serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, religious zealotry, and the devastating consequences of misogyny. It's a grim mirror reflecting back at us, reminding us that the seeds of prejudice, once sown, can take root and bloom into horrifying realities. Its underlying principles, the inherent wickedness of women, the susceptibility of the female soul to demonic influence seeped into societal attitudes, subtly shaping the way women were perceived and treated. It shows us how easily a book, a set of ideas, can become a weapon, a tool used to justify the extermination of those deemed other, different, or inconvenient. The witch hunts were not merely a historical anomaly. They were a stark demonstration of the fragility of societal norms and the ever-present risk of succumbing to the dark impulses within us all. The hammer may have fallen silent, but its echoes linger. Was the woman accused of poisoning her neighbor truly guilty? Or was she simply a convenient target, a victim of societal biases fueled by centuries of ingrained fear? The book itself rarely offered definitive answers, but it gave the authorities the tools to reach a predetermined conclusion. Think about it, for centuries, women who deviated from societal norms, independent healers, midwives with unconventional practices, outspoken individuals, women who simply didn't fit the mold, were easily branded as witches. The Malleus Maleficarum provided the perfect justification, a theological blueprint for persecution. Even after the decline of the large-scale witch hunts, the book's influence persisted. It continued to be cited in legal cases, albeit less frequently. Consider the plight of women accused of witchcraft, even in the centuries following the height of the hunts. Many faced accusations based on flimsy evidence, often fueled by personal vendettas or social anxieties. These accusations, though not always resulting in executions, still carried immense social stigma, economic ruin, and often imprisonment. The legacy of the Malleus Maleficarum wasn't just about the pyres. It was about the subtle, insidious erosion of women's rights and social standing. It was a slow, quiet burn. And the book itself? It wasn't just a dusty relic of a bygone era. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Malleus Maleficarum's legacy is its enduring power to illustrate the human capacity for cruelty, the ease with which fear and superstition can be manipulated to justify violence and oppression. It shows us how easily a book, a set of ideas, can become a weapon, a tool used to justify the extermination of those deemed other, different, or inconvenient. The hammer may have fallen silent, but its echoes linger. The witch hunts were not merely a historical anomaly. They were a stark demonstration of the fragility of societal norms and the ever-present risk of succumbing to the dark impulses within us all. So, there we have it. We journeyed through the bizarre tale of the self-proclaimed Chicken King of 18th century Prussia, his bizarre obsession with poultry, the suspiciously timed disappearance of the royal chef, and the subsequent frankly ludicrous trial involving a flock of geese as key witnesses. Remember the exploding chicken coop? Or the judge's insistence on tasting every single one of the king's prize-winning roosters? Let's be honest, the whole affair reads like a fever dream penned by a particularly deranged satirist. But beyond the absurdity, this story offers a crucial lesson. History, as we've seen, isn't a neatly packaged narrative. It's a chaotic tapestry woven from countless perspectives, often contradictory and wildly subjective. The official account, meticulously recorded by the court scribes, likely glossed over the truly bizarre aspects, focusing on a narrative that served the ruling power. But by piecing together fragmented evidence, whispered rumors, eccentric court records, even the frantic squawks of geese, we can begin to glimpse a more complete, and often far stranger, picture. We must question the sources, challenge the dominant narrative, and actively seek out the marginalized voices to truly understand the past. What would the Chicken King's story look like if told from the perspective of the royal chef, or even one of those seemingly all-important geese? How might our understanding of this historical anecdote shift? Leave a comment below with your thoughts on this unusual case. Like this video if you found this hidden corner of history as fascinating as I did. And subscribe to this channel to join me as we explore more of history's unexpected and often absurd twists and turns.